in because I like being on time. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself just so people understand where I come from. I have worked in restaurants for over, like I said, 46 years up there. I worked at all those different restaurants. I've been a corporate trainer for all of those. I've been the guy that walks around and does inspections on the restaurants. I've also had my own street vending businesses since 1981. I've done 2 hot dog carts and a food trailer. And Melissa and I are getting ready to open up our 4th street food vending business. It'll be another trailer, should be open here in a couple of weeks. And I've also written 4 books, as you can see in the bottom. And the one we're going to talk about most on the next few weeks is going to be Food Truck 101. This is getting people started in the food truck industry, because a lot of folks don't know where to start or where to turn to. And I want to kind of help everybody to know where to go and then also to be super successful once you get open. So we are Food Truck 101. Last week, we talked about the legal side of things, and it does vary from state to state. The simplest thing to do is look it up for your area and then come back into the group and ask questions if you're not clear on what you need to do. This week, we're doing the next puzzle piece, which is the numbers. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to tell me what your signature product is going to be. And if you're not already in operation, just give me an idea of what you want to sell. And while you guys are thinking about that, you just unmute yourself and holler out what you're selling. We're going to focus in on doing a couple of different things, one being subs, another being hot dogs, and we're going to do some varieties of tacos, perhaps some wraps as well. But what we're doing to be able to provide all those different entree items or main items is a lot of cross-utilization of inventory. So even though the menu looks kind of big, it's really not if you break it down into the individual components. So anybody want to share what their goal product's going to be or what their signature is going to be?
Yes, good evening, Bill. This is Ricky Davis.
Hi, Ricky.
I'm in Jersey. My signature sandwich, actually Saturday was our first day. Our signature sandwich is we call a clucker.
Okay.
Which is a fried chicken sandwich.
Uh-huh.
It's made with the breast. And so per breast, we could probably get 2 sandwiches, and then any scraps or leftovers from that, we cut those in chunks, and we also do a rice bowl for that, a fried chicken rice bowl.
So you said Saturday was your first day?
Yep, my first day at a farmer's market. Yep.
How'd it go?
It went well. We're still, just trying to work out all the kinks and get the process down, but I think I felt pretty good. It went well.
As long as you felt good, that's all that matters, because you'll get better and better.
Yep.
That's awesome. I am so glad to hear that. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Hopefully I can get up to your area and try your food out, because I love a good chicken sandwich.
Yes, come on out. It's Southern fried chicken too, even though I'm in New Jersey. I grew up in the South, so there you go.
Well, I'm from the South. That's the only kind of chicken I know is Southern fried chicken.
There you go.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see. Randy says he sells wood-fired pizza. We talked about that a little bit last week. I think it is awesome. Wood fire certainly has its place in the food truck industry, because a lot of folks love good pizza, and especially a wood fire. So that's awesome on the wood fire. Anybody else before I jump into the next part of the slide? Seafood burgers. All right. Actually had one of those yesterday. Melissa made some that were really good, I thought. Seafood burgers is one of our favorite things.
Hi, how you doing? Doing a seafood burger with New style hot sausage.
Okay.
Seafood is shrimp, crab meat, and crawfish tails with ground beef on a charbroil grill.
Oh man, that sounds great. I haven't had a chance to eat today. I've been back-to-back calls since noon, and I'm starving. But then that sounds awesome. Are you open now, or will you be open soon?
I'll be opening soon, hopefully sometime this summer.
Oh, that sounds great. Keep us informed how things are going, because I love watching success stories. Well, thank you so much for sharing your menu, and I wish you a whole bunch of luck.
Thank you, no problem.
You're welcome. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the next part of the slide here. So we're talking about numbers. Very first thing I want to stress, want to iterate, even though I told you I have what sounds like a really big menu, it's not. We have a lot of cross utilization. The bigger menu does not equal larger sales. That is a fallacy that a lot of new food truck owners get into, because they look at their abilities to cook and they go, well, I can make this and I can make this, and we got this piece of equipment, so yeah, we can add this on. And then the problem becomes you don't have enough focus on your menu from your guest standpoint that they're ordering a little bit of everything, but you have a whole bunch of waste, or you end up running out of a whole bunch of food. And neither one of those scenarios is good. If you run out of food, you've also lost sales. And if you have a lot of waste, you have lost profit. So we don't want to ever mess around with that. So small menu and expand as it makes sense for your business. 3 to 4 items, 3 to 4 main items is awesome to start with. And then increase the menu as you get good at what you're doing with those 4 items or so. Now, that doesn't count side items. We're talking main items like burgers. You have a burger, you have a hot dog, you have tacos. That's 3 main items. Now, within those main items, you could have a whole bunch of variety, and that's okay. Just don't go crazy and have 5 different meats on your tacos. Because one of the things that I do all day long is talk to people. And I talk to them about, especially if they're brand new to my coaching program, I ask them what's on the menu. And I have a little teeny tiny piece of paper that I write on for the menu. And a lot of folks give me more things to put on the menu that I can list in that little part of the paper I use. You don't want to have a big menu. You can grow into a big menu, but you don't want to start with a big one. We're going to talk about oils and seasonings. That's something that people forget when they're doing a recipe. They'll tell me, yeah, Bill, I'm selling brined ribs. Well, that's awesome. How do you make them? Well, I put this ingredient and this ingredient and this ingredient, and they list off dry ingredients. And then I'll say, okay, what's the brine? What's the liquid? And they don't account for the liquid. They don't count for all of the seasonings. They don't count for oils, for instance. If you do bun oil, or you're going to butter your buns or butter biscuits, that counts. That is money you had to spend, so we need to account for that on our food costs and on our recipes. Understand that when you're pricing your menu, your location allows you to charge more money because you are convenient. You're someplace where there's not already an existing restaurant. You're there where the crowd is, and the crowd doesn't have to leave to go find food because you're there to sell them food. So your location adds convenience, which can add significant value to your menu, justifying high prices. For example, I live in Florida, live near the beach, used to go out on the beach and vend all the time. I could sell a hot dog on the beach, and this is a number of years ago, when most people are selling hot dogs for $3 a piece. I could sell them for $5 on the beach because I was there. If folks wanted to grab a bite to eat while they were on the beach, they had to leave the beach, go shower, get all the sand off of them, get dried off, and go to a restaurant. Or they could spend $5 and get a hot dog from me and stay on the beach. So they would buy from me, and they didn't mind paying the higher price because I was convenient. Now, if I was selling that same hot dog 1 mile inland, then yeah, I was selling it for $3 a hot dog because they had choices. My convenience evaporated when I was inland just a little bit because people were not having to dry themselves off and kick off all the sand. So understand your convenience adds value, and don't be afraid to charge for that value. Use portion control at every opportunity. When I go through the recipe building process with a new food truck owner, and we talk about how much salt are you putting on something? A pinch. Okay. I have big fingers. My pinch is going to be different than yours. Everything needs a measurement, and it needs to have some type of portion control system so that 2 things happen. One is that you are consistent. The flavor is exactly the same today as it will be next week, as it will be next month. that consistency is what brings people back to you because they can count on you. They know your food is going to taste the same. That's what they want, consistency. The other thing that portion control does for you is controls your profitability. French fries is a really good example. People will say, I sell French fries. How many do you put on a tray? Oh, a handful. I'm 6'3" and I have big hands. My handful is way bigger than my 5'2" wife. Her hands are tiny. So whose French fries would you want as a guest? You'd want mine. Whose French fries would you want as a business owner? You'd want my wife's. We've got to have a consistent measurement so that you guys know how much money you're putting on every single plate. So you're going to weigh them. And once you've weighed them a few times and visually, you can start to duplicate that. You just double check yourself from time to time. And yes, I used to do this when I worked at Burger King. I would weigh up an order of fries every morning and tell the employees, this is what it looks like. This is how it should look. And we would leave that one single fry sitting in the rack as an example for them to fill the fry to the appropriate size. You don't overstuff. You don't squeeze the box so it's little teeny tiny. So you can give that visual example and people can duplicate it. You got to use that portion control. So this is all about numbers, but we haven't talked anything about food cost and we haven't talked about profitability. So let's jump into food cost. I bet you didn't know that there are actually 4 food costs, and we all do them, whether we give them the recognition they deserve or not, but we all do them. The very first one is if you are brand new to the business. This will come up. There it is. If you're brand new to the business, you're sitting down, you're at your kitchen table, you're writing recipes. You're trying to figure out how much it costs you when you do French fries or when you are buying whole potatoes and cutting those up. If you are baking bread or baking biscuits or doing hamburger patties or cutting onions, all of those things have a recipe and you know how much they cost you. And then when you start to put them into the big recipe, let's assemble a burger. So now we got a bun, we got mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato, ketchup, pickle, onion, mustard. We got a hamburger patty, we got a cheese slice. We've got a wrap. All of those things go into the recipe because all those things cost your business money. And here's something we can do. We can also include the credit card processing so that you're profitable, but the recipe is done at the kitchen table. You're sitting there, you're messing around with it. Does this taste right? Do I need more salt? Do I need less salt? And then you write the recipe and cost it out. Everybody does that, or they should do that. Now, here's the one that everybody knows. Your food cost expense. Because this is you actually going to the store, or you going to Restaurant Depot or Sam's or having Cisco deliver to you, but you are writing a check or having them debit this money out of your account. You know exactly how much money you spent on food. That's your food expense. That is not your food cost. Food expense is what you actually pay. It has nothing to do with your food cost because we haven't accounted for your inventory. The third type of food cost you have is called theoretical. Theoretical food cost is similar to the recipe food cost with one exception. It accounts for sales mix. So your recipe costs, you write down your recipe, you got all the ingredients, you got to measure it out perfectly, and you come up with a 25% food cost. You pat yourself on the back and you're thrilled with that number. But that's on paper. You haven't performed it yet. You haven't cooked any of the food. You haven't assembled any of the food. All you've done is write the recipe and you paid for it. Theoretical food cost accounts for your sales mix. So if you have that burger that is a 25% food cost and you sell it with a water that has a 10% food cost, that means your overall food cost for those two items is going to be around a 17.5% food cost. 17.5% food cost is awesome. That's how sales mix works. You have a high food cost item mixed with a low food cost item, and your food cost is going to be somewhere in between those two. Theoretical food cost accounts for all of the food that you sell. And it compares all the food you sell to what it actually cost you. And then it gives you a grand total number. This is what your food cost should be in theory. If you didn't waste anything, you didn't drop anything, you didn't burn anything, you didn't have to remake a sandwich, and you accounted for all your food, your theoretical food cost is a number that gets spit out by your POS system. And it tells you should run a 22.2% food cost. So now what you got to do as a business owner is see, did you really run it? And that's your actual food cost. That's the fourth food cost. This one matters and kind of connects to the expense. The expense is real money you spent. The actual food cost is what you ended up performing when you made the food, when you assembled the food. Because you could have something left over. So you might buy $1,000 worth of food, but you might have $100 of it left over at the end of the week that you can carry over to next week and still use it. So the actual accounts for what you did actually use. In my example, you only actually used $900 worth of food because you had $100 left over. And then you compare these two numbers. So if I actually by inventory have $900 worth of food used, hopefully my POS system bears that out and shows that I should have sold $900 worth of food. It gives me that theoretical food cost. And those percentages should be pretty darn close. They're always going to be off a little bit. It is impossible for the actual to match the theoretical for a couple of reasons. One, your portioning is going to be off at some point. You're going to visually do things when you should be weighing things. And we make that sacrifice so that we can be faster. You're going to burn something, you're going to mismake something, you're going to have to remake something. There's going to be things that cause your actual food cost to be different than your theoretical. What you do, though, is you set a budget for the difference, 0.5%, 0.75%, whatever you can live with and feel good about it. So if you have the actual, because this is real money spent, because you spent it there on the expense, you look at your budget and say, okay, I can afford to be off 0.75% of sales. So if your theoretical comes out to you should have only spent $950, and by your inventory count you spent $975, you're off 25. The money's gone, it's spent, you used it. But you can either accept that as being, yeah, that's an acceptable percent for mistakes and that type of thing, or you can look at yourself and your team and say, this is unacceptable. We need to get that number down. But remember, these two numbers are very unlikely to ever match. They're always going to be off a little bit. So you got to give yourself that room to make mistakes because you're not going to be perfect. So those are the 4 different food costs. The recipe costs when you're starting your business, the expense when you actually spend money, the theoretical is based on what your recipes say, but also on your sales mix. When I talk to people in our food truck group, we talk about 25% food cost. And then people get all bent out of shape because, oh, you can't hit 25%. It's a goal, people. It is a goal. Yes, you can hit it if you try, and yes, you can hit it if you do the math. But if your area is full of people that cannot afford 4 times cost to get the 25%, it's okay. You don't have to be locked into that number. And there's certain products you don't want to sell at 25%. A bottle of water. Here's one. I drink them all day long, costs 14 cents. You're not going to sell that for 56 cents. That would be 4 times cost. You're going to sell it for whatever your area bears the price of, $1.50, even $1. Okay, if you take a 14-cent bottle of water, divide it by $1, that's a 14% food cost, not the 25 that I asked you to get. So the 25 is just an average. There will be certain products that will be lower. There will be certain products that are higher. Don't get hung up so much on the number as you understand the process. And I apologize for having to drink, but my throat is really scratchy. So we have food cost. I've done food cost presentations, and it takes me about 40 minutes to go through a food cost presentation so that you understand the numbers. And that's only one number that we're dealing with. It is most likely going to be your single biggest expense, but there are other numbers. So let's look at them. The break-even point. This is a super important number to you and your business. The break-even point is when you have paid all of the bills, and that could include paying yourself a modest salary. So we paid yourself and we paid the bills. The business owes nothing to anyone. So every dollar beyond that break-even point is mostly profit. It's not all profit because you still got to make the food to make that sale. And you still got to burn propane to make that sale. You still got to have the generator running to make that sale. But most of the money above break-even is profit. Okay, so you got to know the break-even point. How you figure your break-even point is you only have two types of costs. You have one that's called a fixed cost. A fixed cost is one that very rarely or never changes. An example would be your insurance. Never changes, or only changes once a year. Your commissary, your lot rent, your loan payments if you took a loan out for your trailer, your cell phone bill, your permits. If you pay a lawyer, have one on retainer, you're paying them every month. Your accountants, you're probably paying them the same amount every month. All of those bills are fixed costs, and they all got to be paid whether you're open or closed. So you know exactly what those dollar amounts are. So you got to pay the fixed cost. The other expense that you have, the other cost that you have is called a variable cost. A variable cost always relates back to the sales you're doing. If you buy $1 worth of food and you sell all of that food, that dollar is now gone, you need to have more food to make more sales. So it's a variable cost. In order for you to be in business, you have to have food to sell. So food cost is variable. And what that means is a dollar amount rises as your sales rise, but the percentage stays the same. Whereas fixed costs are different. Fixed costs, the dollar amount stays the same, and the percentage goes lower as the sales go higher. So with those variable costs, your food cost is going to be variable. There are certain things that I recommend people also put into the variable cost category, which would be things like cleaning supplies, uniforms, office supplies. All of those things are dependent upon you being open. Obviously, if you're not open, you're not washing dishes, so you're not consuming your soap or using your paper towels. Those are variable costs. Same with office supplies, thermal paper. If you have a printer, that's an office supply. If you're not open for business, you're not using the thermal paper. So there's no need to worry about buying more if you're not open for business. So as you get busier, the percentage still stays the same, but the dollar increase. So if you're busier, you're able to spend more money on cleaning supplies because you're busier. You need to clean more frequently. Uniforms. If you're busier, you're probably wearing them out quicker. So we need to be able to replace those worn out uniforms. So it's a variable number, variable cost. Percentage stays the same. The dollar amount increases as your sales increase. And likewise, if your sales go down, then the dollar amount goes down. So those two costs, the fixed and the variable, have a relationship to each other. And that relationship determines the break-even point. And how you figure that, if you want to know the math, is you take the grand total of all your fixed costs, because that number never ever changes. You're going to divide that by 1 minus whatever your variable percentage adds up to be. So if it's 30%, then you go 1 minus 30%. So you would take the fixed cost, divide it by 0.7, and then that would give you a break-even dollar amount. And that makes perfect sense. It makes a little bit more sense when you actually see it. And I have a spreadsheet that does this in the file section, and I've done 2 videos on this on the YouTube channel to explain how to determine your break-even point. So what I just pulled up here, and the number you should be focusing on is, this is a break-even point. This is a real food truck that I worked with a couple of months ago to help them determine their break-even point. So it's populated with real numbers. The number that makes the most sense, or the one that we all should worry about, is the daily sales. In this example, this food truck needs to do $1,364 a day, and it breaks even. Pays all the bills. It pays a little bit of salary to the owners, and they're happy. Okay. Takes 68 people, a little over 68 people a day coming to this food truck to be able to generate those kind of sales for them to break even. So remember, when they do $1,365, they're on the profit side and they're making a little bit of profit. Okay. Now I'm going to let y'all in on a little secret. You can make that number lower. Wouldn't you, as a food truck owner with the exact same expenses everywhere else except one change, only have to do $1,200 a day? You only need 60 people a day coming to you. The number that I changed, and this is the one that we get into discussions on the group all the time, and there are people that are willing to argue with me over this. This up here has a 33% food cost figured into it. That is 3 times cost. So this food truck has to do $1,364 a day to break even if they run a 33% food cost. People will argue with me. This is what all the other restaurants do. That's what Robert Irvine says on his TV show, and that's what they say. Robert Irvine hasn't run a restaurant in 20-some years. 33% food cost was 1% higher than the goal that Rack's Restaurant had in 1980. There is no restaurant running 33% food cost and making money. Certainly not today. So we change one number. We go to the 25% food cost that I recommend, and look, $150 a day difference. So when you see somebody that says, yeah, do it 3 times cost, this is what they're telling you to do. We want you to have a higher sales volume for you to even break even. That's what 33% does to you. There's somebody that's doing a podcast that's talking about 3 times cost. It's like, dude, do you actually even do your own numbers? Now, where do I get the 25 from? This is experience. You go to Wendy's, talk to any Wendy's manager, their goal right now, and I verified this with my friend that's high up in Wendy's Corporation, 28% food cost is what they're running, and they give them a little bit of a differential for waste. Their theoretical is 28%. They're running 28%. Whataburger, 25%, probably 24% since they got bought out and their prices went sky high. McDonald's, when I worked for them, 26%. So I'm giving you real restaurants that run real numbers. I'm not making up something just because, yeah, I want y'all to have it rough. 25% goal. Now I'm going to let you in on a little secret. A 25% food cost for a food truck, you ain't going to run it. Why are you not going to run it? Because you're not going to inventory. You're not going to take your business as serious as you should, because it requires work to know if you're hitting a 25% food cost. You got to walk around the truck and take an inventory. You got to sit down at a computer and do the math to see what you really did use in your food cost and see how much money you really are spending. So when I tell you to run a 25%, I know in my heart you're going to run probably a 30 or 33% food cost. But you know what? You can make money because I gave you enough of a buffer. But if you follow these people up here that say, yeah, 33%, and you still don't take an inventory and you still don't do anything to help keep the food costs tight to 33%, you're running about a 38 to 40%, and you ain't making no money. Or you're one of those people that say, I've been doing this 3 years and I haven't made any money yet. Haven't paid myself. Or you're one of those people that say, man, I work really hard, don't make any money. That's because they're not taking the job serious. I live and breathe food trucks. I do this all day long. Today, I talked to 7 different people, each an hour long. And I'm talking to you guys tonight. I want you to be successful. It takes just a little bit of work in putting it all together. So the puzzle piece that I tell you, 25% food costs. That's why we're doing this whole training session based on puzzle pieces. If you throw out my puzzle piece at 25% and say, yeah, we'll do 33% because, you know, that's what everybody else says, the rest of the puzzle won't make sense. It won't fit together because now you have this huge piece that now won't fit right there. So nothing else will work. The puzzle won't go together right. This is a conversation we have far too many times. If I sound a little bit preachy, yeah, I am, because I care that much about you guys. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be doing this stuff. I can go out and make all the money I want on my food truck and never have to worry about it. I want y'all to be successful. I want y'all to do things that help you to take those cruises, to help you to go on vacations to places you never thought you could go before. Whenever I ran food trucks, we always had a goal. We're going to go to Walt Disney World. We're going to take a Caribbean cruise. We're going to do something. And that's what that money paid for. We were always working towards a goal. And now my goal is to help you guys be successful.